In this edition of The Great Game, dear viewer, I'm going to talk to you about India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and China. Now, that's a lot of countries, but this is The Great Game, my column in the Tribune newspaper. And this Saturday's headline is Ominous Churning on India's Frontiers. So, as you know, India, the largest country in the subcontinent, Pakistan on its western front, Bangladesh on its eastern front, and the largest country in the neighborhood is actually China. And I'm going to tell you over the next few minutes how India is being encircled actually by China, because China is now, has always been a very good friend of Pakistan. Really, it's a client-patron relationship between China and Pakistan. But in the last few weeks and months, China and Bangladesh are also becoming closer and closer together. So I would request you to read my column in the Tribune newspaper. It's called Ominous Churning on India's Frontiers. My column is The Great Game, and this is my video column. Now, I start my column in the newspaper by talking about how for the first time in 15 years, a Pakistani delegation has traveled to Dhaka. Now, this is really unusual because as long as Sheikh Hasina was Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and you know, dear viewer, that she fled Bangladesh last year in August, on the 5th of August actually, when there was a counter sort of protest or a counter revolution against her by the students and the people of Bangladesh, and she fled and since then has taken refuge in India. Now, as long as she was Prime Minister, the Pakistanis didn't dare go to Bangladesh. But now that she is out of the picture, a Pakistani delegation has wound its way to the capital, to Dhaka. And what is interesting is what happened in that meeting. Amna Baloch, the Pakistani Foreign Secretary, Jeshamuddin, the Bangladeshi Foreign Secretary, and Mr. Jeshamuddin said to Amna Baloch that Pakistan has to say sorry for the atrocities of 1971. That was really interesting. Because it's unlikely that the Pakistanis would have expected something like that on their first visit after so many years. The second thing he said, the Bangladeshi Foreign Secretary, is that Bangladesh is still waiting for $4.3 billion, which was its share of the money that was promised to Bangladesh in 1972 after it separated, after East Pakistan was transformed into Bangladesh, a brand new country with, of course, a little help from India, and that Bangladesh hasn't got that money from Pakistan. Now, we don't know what Amna Baloch said back to her Bangladeshi counterpart, but there it is. And probably in a few days from now, on the 27th and 28th of April, the Pakistani Foreign Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, Ishaq Dar, is also traveling to Bangladesh for a visit. And this is really big. Ishaq Dar is a consummate politician. He's been around for a long time. He's very much a senior politician that belongs to the PMLN, which is the Nawaz Sharif's Pakistan Muslim League Party. He will definitely meet the Bangladeshi Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus. And you all know, dear viewer, that when this so-called revolution in Bangladesh takes place last August, Yunus, until then, was in the US, where he was probably being protected by the Americans. We don't exactly know whether that's true or not, but he lived there. And there's a lot of speculation about why Yunus continued to live. He had been living in the US for so long. One of the reasons perhaps was because Sheikh Hasina and Mr. Yunus did not get along at all. Anyway, Mr. Yunus was sent back, was perhaps interjected back into Bangladeshi politics, and perhaps because the Americans wanted to play, perhaps because the Americans, after Sheikh Hasina's exit, already a very powerful player in Bangladesh, decided that the new Bangladesh or Naya Bangladesh should have Mohammad Yunus as its head. And that brings me back, dear viewer, to the politics in this part of the world. If some of you hark back to the past, 1971, when the war between India and Pakistan is taking place in December, and prior to that, the politics in the preceding weeks and months, how then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi traveled across large parts of the globe to explain what was going on in Bangladesh, how the Pakistani military had been massacring intellectuals, students, young people, old people, anybody who dared to stand up to Pakistan. And not just dared, they were just perhaps in the line of fire. But the Pakistani military was massacring innocent people, young men, women, children, civilians. It didn't matter who. And then you have the specter of the USS Enterprise, which is the US aircraft carrier, beginning to sail towards the Bay of Bengal. But just before that happens, you had the Soviet aircraft carrier, which also was sailing towards the Bay of Bengal, and a sort of face-off between the Soviets and the Americans would have taken place. So then the Americans sort of avoided that, and that was the end of that story. But basically, the Soviets putting out at that time in 1971 that they were going to protect India in its war against Pakistan. Of the Pakistanis or vice versa, the Pakistanis very much an ally of the Americans, the big superpower. The Soviet Union at that time, since disintegrated, very much a partner to India. And if you fast forward to 2024, you have Muhammad Yunus being interjected back into Bangladesh presumably by the Americans. We don't exactly know, but he was living in the US for several years before that. So now, what about the politics in 2025? Muhammad Yunus is there. He is Ishaq Dar, the Pakistani Deputy Prime Minister, is coming to Dhaka in a few days, will be meeting Yunus, and it is more than likely that Ishaq Dar is going to say sorry in some way or the other. And the two countries, Pakistan and Bangladesh, will come much closer together than they have ever done since 1971 or 1972. And that is a big worry for India, for India's foreign policy. Now look at what else is happening in this part of the world. Muhammad Yunus's chief aide is actually hectoring and telling the Indians off, and he's saying that you have to protect your minority community in West Bengal, and he's talking about the violence in Murshidabad. By the way, a growing theme in Bangladeshi politics, which is that India keeps telling Bangladesh to protect its Hindu community, and we've seen how, again, this awful Saturday, how a Hindu leader, Bhavesh Roy, has been killed. There's been a lot of reaction to that. The Bangladeshi is now telling the Indians that you have to protect your minority community, which is the Muslims. Now, in this background of this escalation, not just of violence, but deepening communal rhetoric, not just inside the country, but between India and Bangladesh, is not very good news. And then on the third hand, you have Yunus, who only a couple of weeks ago or so was in China, where he told the Chinese that the Bay of Bengal is open for you and that you must come and invest in Bangladesh, and we will help you as much as you can. Now, just look at this whole scene as it unfolds itself, dear viewer. Pakistan, on the one hand, not very friendly towards India. You have continuing terrorist operations in J&K, especially in the Jammu region, in Kathua. Bangladesh, on the other hand, growing relations with China. You know that, in fact, they call the Pakistanis and the Chinese admit that their relationship is, and they describe it in very eloquent terms, which is higher than the mountains, deeper than the seas, and sweeter than honey. So what do you think then is happening to India's frontiers? China basically coming closer and closer together with Bangladesh on the one hand. Pakistan has been there for a while, and India right in the middle. These are India's ominous frontiers. And don't forget, dear viewer, that although India and China are now bringing back some degree of normalcy to their own relationship, the problem of the face-off on the line of actual control has never been fully resolved, because there are no talks about what that boundary is, whether it's because both India and China claim parts of that boundary. Be that as it may, the Narendra Modi government obviously has a lot of concerns, a lot of worries on its hands. And before I go, I'd like to also request you to subscribe to the Tribune's YouTube channel. to tell me what you think about this video, The Great Game, as well as all the other videos from the stables of the Tribune. Thank you so much for watching, and bye for now.